Hello and welcome to Along the Way Life's Journey. I'm your host called Buccellato. Well, we're here again, once again, just for a chat. And this chat has to do with the many changes that are going on in this country. Amazing changes. This past week, we watched the President of the United States deliver his message to the joint seats of Congress. An amazing speech. The longest in history, I think, over 100 minutes, in which he displayed the amazing changes that have taken place in the first month of his presidency. And what struck me so starkly was that there were so many positive things that he had to report, so many things that were done correctly. And yet, once again, we had these never-Trumpers sitting there as part of the Congress, acting like children. Petty little nothing things to do and say. One of them actually was so out of sorts that he had to be removed from the House of the Congress. Al Green. What a despicable display. Rather than show the respect for the office, he and 180 other Democrats stood there acting like fools, flashing signs, making stupid gestures, all at the same time that the president was highlighting real Americans who have suffered through strife and difficulty. A young man who survived brain cancer. And the whole world stood up to recognize what a wonderful tribute that was and what he had done. And they sat there, stoically. Couldn't bring themselves to applaud for a young boy who survived brain cancer. Couldn't bring themselves to applaud for mothers of children who had been brutally murdered by illegals in the United States. Couldn't bring themselves to show some common decency. You know, we live in a world that seems to have gone mad. We have now a president who has an overwhelming majority of approval. That speech received a 79% approval rating on CBN and the MSNBC, all of these channels that are never Trumpers. And they took polls immediately afterwards. And overwhelmingly, the American people, not just the Republicans, not just the independents, but included many Democrats, agreed and approved of what he said. Yet these morons stood there acting like fools instead of the representatives of their constituents. They will never change. They say over and over again, never change, never change. You know, when Winston Churchill said that to the people in England, while they were being destroyed daily by the Blitzkrieg, he gave them a rally sample. And he said, you know, if you follow these 5 words for success, we will surely prevail. Never, 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 never quit. And the British people did that, and they overcame one of the strongest attacks on their island that has ever taken place by the mightiest nation in the world at that time, the strongest air force. And they overcame, and they survived. But these people are going against common sense. They're going against value. They're going against the majority of their own people. Even the Democrats are ashamed of what they're seeing. What could they possibly hope to gain from such a ridiculous show of stupidity? And then when Al Green was sanctioned by the Speaker of the House, and the next day the Congress voted on it, every Republican and 10 Democrats voted to sanction Al Green for his actions. And 170 of them voted against that and stood in tandem with them, singing, "We shall overcome." How did they bastardize such a fantastic theme for freedom? They're not overcoming a lack of freedom. They're working and acting in tandem to overthrow the president and the government of the United States. And everyone sees through the folly of it, the foolishness of it. How could they possibly hope to gain support again in this midterm election that's coming up? Unless there's an enormously disastrous situation that occurs. America is not going to vote for that kind of nonsense. You know, we came to a point where we used to have town criers in this world before newspapers were prevalent. And the town crier would go about telling people what was going on in the world and in their community at large. It morphed into a newspaper world where we learned our news of what was going on through printed press. Benjamin Franklin was involved with that. And that press grew into what is known now as the mainstream press in the United States, and it's protected under the Constitution. It's protected so that no monarchy can stop them from free speech and speaking out against insanity and wrong. Well, the free press now is one of the lowest approval ratings ever in history. People don't trust them anymore because they lie. They're part of this whole common scheme with the radical Democrats who are trying to take over this world. Where do they go for their information now? Overwhelmingly, they go to podcasts and to blogs, Fox News, of course, on television, but blogs and the podcasts have a greater viewing audience than any of the printed press or any of the published television networks. I know a man who's going to be on my show next week who did a program, a blogger. His name is Jeff Ofstra. He did a program on the assassination attempt of Donald Trump, and he got more viewers in 9 hours than MSNBC and CBS got on their coverage in an entire week. He got it on one blog because America is turning to find the truth in different places. And one man's truth is another man's folly, as they say, because there are still people blindly following this nonsense, blindly looking at people like Elon Musk, who are doing a remarkable job in uncovering fraud and discrepancies in all of these agencies, in the hundreds of billions of dollars in graft, fraud, and waste. And they say he's out to steal from America. He's the richest man in the world. He does this for no value return to him. His own personal net worth has come down because of his holdings in his stock that have taken a hit because of these naysayers that are critical of him. But still, he perseveres. What did they ever get away? This Al Green, who spoke out against the president, who has been a disgrace in his constituency. This man, the Congressional Secure Package, I forget what they call it, the exact name of it. He paid over $800,000 to buy off a woman's sexual assault claim against Al Green. Your money, my money, went to pay off his sexual assault. And people vote him back into office. How is that possible? How do we possibly be so blind to vote in a person like that? But this is America, and everyone has a right to their free thought, and everyone has their right to their opinion, and they have a right to their vote, whichever way they wish. But they should educate themselves on what's really going on. This whole thing that's going on between the president and President Zelensky, you look at what the attempt is to bring about a resolution to a war that they cannot win. The Ukraine cannot win that war, especially if the United States stops feeding the hundreds of billions of dollars in arms to support it. Europe will, they come up with a lot of bluster. They say they're going to support them. But look at the record. They've never come forward to support any country in real need. No, not in any major consequential way. This program will utilize minerals and resources to the benefit, yes, of American industry. Yes, the American people will have a way to recapture $350 billion in aid that we sent to the Ukraine. But the Ukrainian people will also receive $1 trillion in value to rebuild their nation, their infrastructure, their school systems, their hospitals, their communication system, their power plants can all be rebuilt with the money that's realized from that program. And with American industry in there at that size, the Putin administration would never dare attack that because it would be a blatant act of war against the United States. And even though China is blustering and beating its chest, saying, we'll take you on in any way, that's all bullshit. We know it. That's a threat. That's a threat attempt. That's a fear attempt. There is no country stronger than the United States, even in its weakened condition, which we inherited from the Biden administration that stripped down attendance in the armed forces and our supportive industries, and they destroyed what Trump had built in 4 years. They destroyed it. Well, he's building it back up in a rapid fashion. And this is a strong, secure nation. Our economy will take a couple of bumps in the road because of these tariffs, but that will work itself through. The nation of Mexico and the nation of Canada will recognize that the aim and the vision is to eliminate fentanyl coming across our borders. When they wise up, as Mexico is already starting to do, and take action against the cartels, and the United States has just declared the cartels as terrorist groups. So there is more coming as far as that goes. We will have a sound economy. We will have a sound structure. We will have peace in this country and in this continent. And I believe we will end up in peace across the world. There is a peace accord going on right now in the Middle East that no one ever thought was possible. There's a possibility for peace in the Ukraine. Putin, who has blustered a lot, has a nation that is suffering economically, while he's getting personally, and these oligarchs are getting fat on $100 billion in crude oil that's been purchased through Europe to them, and it supports them personally, not the Russian people. Wake up, America. I think most of America is awake. What I should say, wake up, Democrats. Wake up, open your eyes. Take a clear look at the realities, the truth, not the nonsense and lies that you hear over. Fight, we will fight. They do fancy videos showing women dancing and like they're fighting in a statue that it's not even a fight stance. Now, what do they hope to gain from that? They're going to attract more youthful people who are demonstrating and against the universities again, paid demonstrators. Somebody said to them, if you're not a coward, why don't you take off your mask when you demonstrate against the university and let us see who you are? Well, they'll never do that because they're not students. They're paid demonstrators. So they won't take off their masks to show who they are because they know, as with one of them, they'll end up being deported out of this nation. So we're going to have a great show next week with Jeff Osteroff, who is a wonderful blogger. We're going to have some wonderful programs coming up with great guests. We have Joel Diamond, who is one of the premier producers of all time in the musical industry. He's coming on. Dr. David Bass, the creator of a remarkable new chair for decompression to help millions of people with spinal problems, myself included. Wonderful people. We're going to have Ed Pozwali back on again, who is the premier writer now for Savage Street. He's done some remarkable work. And, we definitely have to talk about it. But we must recognize that America is on a precipice of explosive growth and change. And we have to accept that there will be some blips in the road, but we will do our share. We will all do our share and support this wonderful administration. A great group of people. They believe in faith. They believe in democracy. They believe in free speech. They believe in the fact that everybody has a chance to make it in this great country. But they believe in the right and the rule of law. And we must have law. And we must have law that is Lady Justice, that is blind, that serves everyone equally. Not political partners, not political attacks, which is what we've lived through for the last 4 years. Can't let that continue. Over the last 100 years, this group of people has insidiously chipped away at the marble and chipped away a little at a time at our values and our core strengths and who we are. It's taken over the educational system. It's taken over much of our children, dividing them from racially and telling people that they shouldn't be satisfied with who they are as human beings, and they should change their sex and so forth. Well, all these studies have come up recently and found out that most of these young people who've gone through the sex change surgery have suffered greatly afterwards, emotionally. They have suffered greatly, and they have a much higher opportunity of dying from abuses chemical abuses, suicides, because they were never meant to be different in the first place. They were told early in their life that they should be, or they could be, and they must be. And all of it, President Trump said to every child in America, be thankful and grateful for who you are, because you're exactly as God intended you to be. Don't let people con you and fool you into thinking that it should be something else. We have a bunch of young people in this country that are parroting and mimicking words that they hear that they have no idea what they're talking about. This whole attack on the universities in America, once again, anti-Semitism, this whole attack, when this happened in the 60s and people, went forward and they said, they were against the man and they were against the war, and they stood up and, movies that they made about the Seven and how they were tried and nothing ever came of it. They fit into Main Street America. They became part of academia. They became part of the legal systems, and they ran for offices, and some of them are in Congress today, and some of them, they are the man that they were fighting against now. They are the people who are trying to overthrow this country. And they're doing it in a much more sophisticated way in some cases, but in the most rank and file, when you look at what the Congress did this week at this presidential speech, what a joke of integrity. What a joke against people who are supposed to be representing the American people. No decorum, no respect for the law, no respect for the offices, no respect for the Constitution. I applaud the Speaker of the House for calling in the Sergeant of Guards and having him removed. And when they demonstrated, 190 of them demonstrated his sanctioning action, people on the right side said to the Speaker of the House, have them all removed. Now, that would have looked bad to the press, and I'm sure they would have played it up as though they were trying to repress the democratic speech. But that's not democratic speech. That's a lack of consideration for law. That's a lack of respect for the House of Congress. They acted like children, not representatives of the American people. I'm sure some people will look at this commentary and say, you're right. And others will look at it and say, how could you be so blind? Well, I'm not blind. My eyes are wide open. Wide open. I see full force what's been happening here. And I know that while the Democrats say, fight, we will never stop fighting. Okay, well, you're getting a lesser, smaller and smaller group of people believing in you. The governor of the state of California, Gavin Newsom, who has been the premier liberal screwball for the last number of years, has come out with a new podcast where he has invited, for the first time on his podcast, a conservative podcaster talk about these issues. And if ever I saw a man who's struggling to space himself away from his party and the actions that he and they took over the last number of years, it's Gavin Newsom. He's trying to be the leopard that's changing spots, but he is who he is, and time will tell. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time. I remind you that this is America, and we have a right to speak freely. We have a right to believe in our God. We have a right to, as I say to you every day, put on our armament of God, our helmet of salvation, breastplate of righteousness, gird ourselves with the belt of truth, walk in the shoes of the gospel of faith, peace, and remember that we are Americans, one and all. So, I will remind you what I have said a number of times on this show. This show is brought to you by this book, To Every Page You're Turning. It is a book that I wrote some years ago after retiring. It has become an Amazon bestseller. It's in its third printing, and it's a wonderful read. It talks greatly about the paradigm shifts in the 20th century and the events and trials of my generation, being born during the war years in the early 19th. I was born during World War II in 1942. Throughout the generational changes with some of the people that I've just been talking about and what they attempted to do to change America, how we suffered through the the end of World War II and how we went through Korea and how my generation suffered through Vietnam. So many died. So many came home to be scorned and brought. So much change economically, paradigm shifts in technology, the desperate need for restitution and faith in our lives, and how God changed who I am as a person. I think you'll enjoy the read. It's a wonderful read. People have read it and told me that they cried and they laughed and they saw themselves in it. So I ask you once again, who are you? Are you a free American? I believe you are. Are you a person of faith? I believe you are. That's who I am. This is my story for today. And I say, as always, you have your story. Make sure you speak it out. Tell it to your loved ones. Write it out. Send it to the newspapers. Even Jeff Bezos, who's in charge now of the Washington Post, is looking at things differently, has changed the entire editorial staff. Of course, it's time for freedom again in America. Write out your story before it's too late, because when it's too late, it's too late. All that wisdom is gone. And I say what I tell you every day. Get someone you know today, grab them in a bear hug. Tell them you love them. Tell them you love them. It may be the only time they hear those words. And I'm quite sure God loves them also. He loves you and he loves me. God bless you, America. I love you. Bye-bye.